Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 26th meeting of the East Bank Development Authority. Go ahead and call the meeting to order now. And the first item on the agenda is the public comment period pursuant to the Tennessee Open Meetings Act, TCA Section 844-101. Is there anybody here who'd like to address the board? If you come forward and sit down, please state your name and address, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak to the board. And you've got a clock right there to keep an eye on it.
37206. All right, perfect. Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of Concerned Nashville Neighborhoods. My comments today relate to the public comment recorded in the meeting minutes, which are up for approval today. After months of attending, speaking at, and listening to neighbors at neighborhood meetings, one message is clear. Nashville must build the East Bank for people, not for traffic. Eliminate any 6-lane boulevard options from the plan. Why? Because a 6-lane road would be a giant step backwards, the antithesis of everything Nashville is doing to make our city safer and more walkable. Just consider, we've recently adopted Vision Zero and Choose How You Move plans to end traffic deaths. Our deadliest roads remain like fast corridors such as Dickerson, Gallatin, and Nolensville Pike. Look at our success stories. We have 12 South, which has narrowed lanes. We've added space for bikes and people, and it's thriving. Second Avenue is being rebuilt with wider sidewalks and outdoor space, and it was the perfect corridor for the CMA Fest. A 6-lane East Bank would contradict these efforts, like dropping a mini interstate into a walkable neighborhood. And the public has been clear. In East Bank's own survey this spring, 70% of respondents oppose the 6-lane design. I also carry letters from 10 different neighborhood associations opposing and calling for no more than 4 lanes. I also have conversations with leaders from Germantown, West End, Sylvan Park, and many others who agree. This is truly a citywide consensus, and we will not let another highway cut through our community. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here, and imagine Nashville gets to start with a blank slate to build a downtown of the future. In conclusion, I urge you to commit now to ruling out a 6-lane option.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Thanks, Alex. Can you get those letters to Mr. York so that we have them from the neighborhood associations?
An email copy yesterday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You can go ahead and come forward. And again, if you'll please state your name and address, you'll have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Sadie Cooper, and I'm currently serving as the president of the Shelby Hills Neighborhood Association. I'm here on behalf of our board of directors and the neighbors of our community to voice our strong opposition to the proposed 6-lane East Bank Boulevard design. Being one of the closest neighborhoods to the new East Bank development, our neighbors will be most affected by the development of this area and the changes that will have a direct impact on our neighbors for years to come. As neighbors of East Nashville, we value walkable, bikeable, multimodal infrastructure. We value neighborhoods that promote people first, traffic calming measures, and community. It is for these reasons that many of us chose to live here. The proposed 6-lane thoroughfare does not align with the views of the neighborhood, nor does it promote the kind of vibrant, human-centered neighborhoods that attract people to move here. Aside from this, there is the obvious safety concern, as a 6-lane road will only bring significantly more traffic, higher speeds, and increased traffic-related injuries. Secondly, simply put, this is a brand new neighborhood that is going to be a place where people live and work. So who will this road really be serving? Our new neighbors are the people who are simply passing through. We as neighbors and the Board of Shelby Hills respectfully request the proposed 6-lane designs be eliminated and that you consider instead alternatives that focus on multimodal, people-first use that will serve the community well into the future. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Joseph Lee. I live on 1418B Sharp Avenue, right behind the Publix in East Nashville, and I'm here on behalf of Eastwood neighborhood. As the neighborhood that directly abuts the Gallatin, we know that how big of a moat that is that just bisects our neighborhood, and that's just only a 5-lane road. And this new 6-lane road will definitely make crossing extremely dangerous and not conducive to foot traffic, which actually benefits business. So I would strongly urge you guys to eliminate the 6-lane option, especially when the reason given is that it's the potential traffic count. But on Gallatin, the daily traffic count is about 15,000 per daily average traffic per year, and we can do that with 1 lane because NNDOT has plans to reduce that into to 2 lanes and two bus lanes. And so I also encourage you guys to consider the Civic Design Center's proposal, which includes a carousel, which is great. But hear me out, it probably doesn't go far enough. What we can do is create a Jurassic Park and put all of the engineers and planners who proposed a 6-lane lane in it as exhibit. When I was talking to the engineers about how he really make the numbers of 30,000 cars per day, I was very mad, but I'm also quite astonished by how well he looks for being 65 million years old. So just think about a major attraction like the Jurassic Park, which could also help pay for the campus tax of the Titan Stadium. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Ben Metz, and I'm here on behalf of the Civic Design Center, for which I'm currently the board president. My public comment will be regarding the approval of last meeting's minutes. The Civic Design Center has provided public comment for the last 2 East Bank Development Authority meetings following April's engagement effort to ask for public opinion on the preferred design of East Bank Boulevard. With the overwhelming public opposition to that design, it brings us to the root of our mission, which is to advocate for civic design visions that will improve the quality of life for all. Civic design represents design by and for the people who live in the city, and people want to see something better. The plan for the East Bank has been celebrated as a pedestrian-friendly, walkable neighborhood. The design that is progressing does not fully address these opportunities. The Civic Design Center would like to see 3 things that would make for a safe, vibrant neighborhood street. Number 1, where the street design is rooted in what Nashvillians want for the East Bank. Number 2, where the design aligns with the NDOT modality hierarchy, serving pedestrians first. And number 3, where the design demonstrates the best possible outcome for a growing transit-oriented city. The Design Center recently united with other local experts to form Everyone's Neighborhood Coalition, envisioning a new concept for the East Bank transportation network that exemplifies those 3 priorities. Over 100 individuals have signed their name to the concept, as well as a handful of local businesses and East Nashville neighborhood groups. We are thrilled to discuss this concept with Metro decision makers next month and hope to find common ground for everyone's future neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Seeing none. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, before we leave this meeting, can you give us a quick update?
Good morning. Quick update on that is the City of Nashville and the East Bank team are working on coalescing the design parameters for that. We have completed the data collection phase, and we've handed that data to the city leaders that will be the asset owners. NDOT, WEGO, Chime, Mayor's Office. And so that team, along with us as a subject matter expert, will be assisting them in that conversation. And they're working through that decision right now. I don't have a timeline on when and if they will make that decision, but we're working through that process with them weekly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. York. Next item on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes from the June 24th East Bank meeting. Does entertain a motion here regarding the minutes?
So moved.
On any discussion?
Maybe just a brief discussion. I hear from the public comments some reflection of what I perceive to be concern that the comments aren't, summarized in the minutes. And I hear that concern, and I think looking at it, and maybe Mr. Cross can help us, it seems like the minutes format, and it may even be how all minutes for agencies are, is not that the nitty-gritty of any discussion is talked. It's actually the action items that are reflected. And so, of course, these are recorded and on YouTube, but while if the rest of the minutes were robust with lots of, A, B, C, D of what was discussed, I would have some concern that the public comment wasn't bullet, but it seems like that's not the format that these minutes work in, and my guess is that's the practice across agencies. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure that there's a common practice across metro agencies. If you would like to see more detail on the public comment in the minutes, that'd be an appropriate subject for a motion.
Okay.
I would just, with regard to that, I'm not opposed to it in theory. I would like to be cognizant of staff's time, because staff is doing, depending on how many comments we have. I know sometimes at planning commission meetings, for example, there are, without limits on the number of people who can address the board. To your point, Mr. Tiff, they are recorded. So I'm happy for us to engage, hear the comments, and of course, I think it's up to the board's discretion what we want to do, but I do want to be cognizant of staff's time.
Real quick, could you not ask them if they wanted to have their comments into the record, that they could submit what they said to us, and then you insert it so you don't have to type in everything?
You mean like in an email format that's then just attached to the minutes?
Or when they speak, if they hand you a copy of what they're going to say, then you can include that in the minutes, and it doesn't take it off to anybody if they want to be that way.
I think that would work.
Yeah, sounds great. To me, that's good for the discussion. I'm ready to vote.
Okay. So the motion was to approve the minutes from the June 24th meeting, and there was a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, next matter on the agenda is the employment contract for the East Bank Development Authority CEO. This is on the agenda. At the last meeting, there was a motion that was approved for the board to hire independent counsel to review the contract. This matter is on the agenda before the discussion regarding the attorney, because this matter was on the agenda last time and we did not dispose of it one way or the other. So taking it in the order that it was before the board, it's on the agenda first. Personally, I reviewed the contract myself. I am an attorney. I'm not the board's attorney, but I am an attorney. I did not find anything objectionable in the contract, which is why I voted against the motion last month. I don't think that I didn't find anything objectionable. So we have an order or a motion that was approved for us to hire independent counsel. I would entertain a motion to reconsider that if there is somebody that voted in the majority who would like to make that motion. But absent a motion to reconsider that prevails, then I'm prepared to make a recommendation for an attorney.
I'd like to make that motion to reconsider.
I'll second. Am I allowed to second? Does it need to be someone who voted in the majority?
Just the movement needs to have been in the majority.
Then I'll second.
So there's a motion on the floor to reconsider the hiring of an attorney specific to the contract. Is there any discussion about that?
Since I made the motion, I think the motion was just to have not just for this contract, but counsel for everything we do.
Right, and that's the next item that we'll discuss.
Well, but this contract would be inclusive to the contract. And there's another item, the construction contract. So it's to have that independent counsel to represent us relative to any contract, not just the employment contract. That's the way I intended the motion to be. I wasn't picking on any particular event. I was just saying to have independent counsel.
So now we have a motion on the floor to reconsider that. So I guess we need to discuss that motion to reconsider, and if we want to tweak that, or this is the discussion about the reconsideration and what that would look like.
Well, and I would echo your comments, Madam Chair. I think as to this specific contract, which is still first in order, having been on the agenda last time, Metro Legal, who has broad expertise in employment agreements with city and municipal workers, drafted the contract. I don't see anything objectionable or problematic in it. I reached out to Mr. Cross yesterday because the attestation line said secretary, and we don't have a secretary, so we changed that to board member. That's a change reflected in there, as well as I noticed a numbering that was off that's been updated, but I have no substantive concerns, and I am more than happy to rely on the fact that Metro Legal was actively involved in drafting, and of course, that Mr. York is our mayor's appointment under the statute. The mayor has the authority to appoint. Ben's credentials are fantastic, and I'm excited to move forward and be able to vote yes on his contract. So that's my thought on the reconsideration.
I would also point out, and I don't know if it's appropriate for Mr. York to address the board about this, but I have spoken to Mr. York about this, and he is eager to be an employee of the East Bank Development Authority. So I think that Mr. York, I assume that you have also reviewed the contract and don't have any objections to it. So would like to hear from you on that.
That is correct. Yeah, I am eager to officially be on the East Bank Development Authority team. I've been acting in that role for several months now, and I just look forward to that finalization of that point and moving forward. So.
Yeah, I have one quick clarifying question, and I'm generally supportive of this motion. The contract lists the authority as the employer, but kind of implies Metro as a co-employer. Can you clarify how, like, performance evaluation will happen, kind of what those lines of delineation might be for the board?
Yeah, the lines of delineation are I work for the board. There is no Metro purview over my employment status. There's no Metro review over my employment status. There's no direction from Metro over that. That is simply a mechanism to move forward.
Great. And I will point out, I'll read from the contract. It says specifically, for the avoidance of doubt, the executive shall serve at the direction and discretion of the authority. So Metro shall provide executives compensation and benefits, which shall be reimbursed by Metro by the authority. So to my understanding from reading the contract, Metro is paying the salary while we are essentially receiving funds from Metro, but he will be our employee at our discretion and under our authority. There are also specific provisions about termination of the employment. The authority can terminate it for cause or without cause, subject to certain provisions, but there's no termination clause for Metro. So he will be fully an authority employee.
So are we currently at a motion to approve the contract?
We're at a motion to reconsider the motion to hire an attorney. So I think we first need to vote on whether or not we want another attorney, an independent attorney, to review this contract. If we do, then I'll make a recommendation for that. And we would need to also include in that this item would again go to next month so that the attorney can review it and opine on the contract terms. So the motion before the board now is to reconsider hiring an attorney for purposes of this contract.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. Okay. So I guess, is there any more discussion on the matter?
No, let's vote.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So that passes. So now we will need to move on to voting on the contract.
And I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve Mr. York's contract with the slight edits that are reflected in the final version, most notably that the attestation line is for board member instead of secretary.
And is there a second?
I second it.
I have questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So the contract says you work for the authority. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who has the power on the East Bank? Who has the authority on the East Bank? Metro or the authority, in your opinion?
In my opinion, the East Bank Development Authority has the authority on the East Bank to fulfill the guidelines within the private act.
Right. And the private act says the authority has the sole discretion, does it not, to do X, Y, Z?
I don't have it directly in front of me, but I believe those are, yes, that's an accurate description.
So if that's the case, then can you tell me why the authority is not the body negotiating with TPAC?
I understand that at the current time, the land has not officially fully transferred and that the funds, we do not have our own funding streams. And so the funds, therefore, are being allocated from Metro. And that is the reason that that conversation is ongoing.
Right. And so let me just say, so you were here back in earlier this year when Bob Mendez said that those parcels were being transferred to the authority, correct? 6 months later, they're not transferred, correct?
Correct. We have now engaged with Kimley Horn and Associates to complete the plat of record that would allow those properties to be determined and named and described properties that would be transferable.
May I interject and ask a question of our legal counsel, fully wanting to engage whatever the board sees fit to discuss? But we're on the matter of the contract, and we're now talking about something.
No, my questions pertain if he's going to be our leader.
Sure.
Then I want to be very clear on what we can and can't do for the authority based on his leadership. And why, as an authority, if he's going to represent us, why can we not know why we don't have the authority to negotiate with TPAC? Because we're hiring him in, potentially, and if he doesn't believe that we have the authority and the power or what the situation is, how can he represent us against Metro? And it's very important for me to know where he stands because that affects my vote.
Sure.
That's the purpose of the questions.
Does anybody object to this line of questioning or this topic of discussion as we move forward? Absent objection, I have no issue continuing, but I do want to offer that to the board.
Yeah, I don't object to the line of questioning for the purposes of what the speaker has how he's framed it. But getting into the nuances of decision-making that was happening outside of this board and with the council, there are certain things that I don't think are appropriate to, for lack of a better word, attack Mr. York with the peppering of questions. Can we reframe some of the questions in a way that's more appropriate for this discussion? Continue with your next.
I thought I was being very kind, but maybe not. So if you're our executive director, the reason the authority or the reason why you're currently not negotiating TPAC for the authority, and it's the mayor's office, is because, in your opinion, we don't have possession of that property.
It's in my opinion that they are requesting the infrastructure investment that we do not have the funds to allocate towards.
But it's
that's
also legally accurate that we don't own the property.
right. I mean,
As
you
of
can't be
currently,
both.
right now, we
Right.
do not have ownership of the property by deed. There is a future where we're in an intergovernmental agreement. It outlays we retain ownership of that property. It has not yet occurred. It is a perfunctory matter that has not gotten to those steps yet.
Would you be willing, if you're our executive director, to get Metro to transfer those properties before they negotiate all the deals so that the authority has the capability to negotiate those?
We are working on that step as we speak. We have engaged them to complete that plat, which gives us the property description, which allows us to transfer that.
On those other properties as well?
On all of the initial development area properties.
So your feeling is, let me just recap, is you work for the authority. The authority has the authority over the East Bank. And since we own no property, we aren't an authority because we're not in control of it. And because of a contract that was negotiated where there's no rents paid until completion instead of at the beginning, since we have no funds, that ties our hands in the future as well.
Since we have no funds, we don't have the ability to negotiate or agree upon any installation of infrastructure outside of the approval and the allocation from Metro Council. Is the way I've been understood the kind of the dynamic at play at the moment.
Right. So as our representative, would you be willing to try to go back and renegotiate the contract with Fallon or Metro to where the authority has the capability to do something before 8 years?
I mean, we can have a conversation with the Fallon Company if they would like to do that. I mean, I think we're kind of pivoting into a hypothetical that I haven't entertained any of that conversation, and none of those representatives have approached me or our team about that.
No, I mean, I understand. I'm just saying if you're going to be over the authority, it'd be nice for you to actually be able to do something. I mean, I don't know what the salary is. What's the salary in that contract? 225. So basically, it looks like we'd be paying 220, whatever, 220, right? We're paying $220,000 a year for us and for you to do, I don't know, recommendations.
No, I mean, much like later on in this agenda, there's a contract for construction regarding construction to implement some of the infrastructure, a piece of the infrastructure. And so one of our tasks in the private act is to oversee and implement, and we're actively participating in that implementation.
The private act is much broader than, I'm sorry, is much broader than that. I mean, it is.
Oh, yeah.
But if we're paying you or if we're hiring you and paying you with Metro's money, apparently, because of the negotiation of the Fallon contract, then what we are, your hands are tied, our hands are tied. That's my bigger issue is we're approving a contract for somebody who theoretically there's hardly little that they can do to act as an authority.
Can I reframe, or maybe,
Can everybody turn their mics off? Because only a certain number can be on at once. And now I've lost my train of thought.
can I jump in with a kind of clarifying question? I mean, I think in that line of thought, maybe a question for Ben is, as our CEO, if the board voted to direct you to do something along the lines of what the speaker is saying, would you feel it's within your ability and power within the contract and the setup that you would be able to go and
Yes.
you would take direction from the majority of the board?
I have a question for the speaker. Is your concern with respect to hands being tied and what he views his authority, is your concern specific to Mr. York, or is your concern specific to the overall authority of the board, in which case, how does that relate to this contract?
No, I think if we're an authority that lacks authority because we don't have the property and we don't have the authority to handle infrastructure, when the private act is very clear on what we can and can't do. But if the parcels are never transferred to us until after they negotiate, and you got all these other hundreds of acres or 100 acres of parcels, the question is, if Metro negotiates it and sends it to us after the fact, there's nothing we can do. So my point is, if we're not an authority, then I like Ben. Why do we need Ben? Because what is being brought to us, because everything is after the fact. And so would it be better just to have legal counsel in general, because everything's coming after it's negotiated. Everything's coming after the contracts are signed. And so what role does the ED play for us if there's no authority here?
Is your understanding of the private act that the land is ours now, is the authorities now? Because it's owned by Metro. Is your understanding of the private act that the private act conveys the land to us?
I think that's interpretation. But what I'm saying is 6 months ago we were told that property was being transferred to the authority.
Sure.
6 months later, it's not transferred. They're still working out the details on TPAC. They're not going to transfer that property until they work out that deal. Otherwise, they would have transferred it 6 months ago. So I don't think there's intent for us to ever decide what to put on a parcel of land if they will never transfer it until after the fact. If that's the case, I like them, but why do we need an executive director at a tune for $220,000 a year only to have to pay Metro back in 4 years when we have the opportunity to collect rents, right? I mean, it becomes... It's a fundamental, what are we tasked here to do? The private act says we can do this, but yes, we do need the property. If we never get the property until after the fact, we're just managing.
Right. And would you be more comfortable with a contract with Ms. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, I'm sorry, with her clarifying question that if we asked as our employee, if we directed him to try to renegotiate or go back to the table, go back to the drawing board, he's willing to do that. Would that make you comfortable with the contract?
I mean,
Would that satisfy your
well, I mean, the
concerns,
contract's
guess?
fine. He's going to work for us. He's being paid by Metro, which I think becomes a conflict, to be honest with you. I think it's a conflict because the money's coming from there. He works for us. Human nature is human nature. But I just want to put on the record the two fatal flaws that we have. The Private Act gives us the power, but we have to have the land, right? So we can have an ED, but in theory, there's nothing really they can go negotiate all day long, but it doesn't set in place anything else. But we do not have the capability. If Metro does not transfer the land until after the fact, there's nothing we can do at all, right? Mm-hmm. So that becomes a problem. And so the other thing is when they enter into the contract with Fallon, and I told Fallon, congratulations. I don't know of any other contract where you don't pay rents until you're complete, because we have no basis to collect any funds to be independent. And so that contract negotiation alone that was done by Bob Mendez has tied the hands of this board. So we have no funds. We can't get funds. We can't get any property. We have no power until we get the property. They're negotiating everything without us. I don't think anybody at this table's been involved in the TPAC negotiations. And so if we hire Ben, we're paying $220,000 that we have to pay back at some point when we start collecting rents. For what purpose? That's my general thing is, if we were functioning as the authority and we were operating like BNA and this was Doug and so forth, and we were hiring and he had the capability to design, to build, to do this, I'm all about it. But we're collecting $220,000 that we have to pay back, but he really has no ability to affect change other than try to get Metro to do something. That's my crutch.
And I mean, a few things I'd like to address. I mean, I think I don't agree that the authority doesn't have authority just because Metro decides how they want their land done. I mean, across the 500 plus acres, there's a significant number of private property owners. And in the case of the Metro land, it's Metro vis-a-vis property owner as opposed to government, just like whether it's, our exciting Oracle project or the purchase of PSC. I mean, all these private property owners are going to have significant say over what they're willing to commit their property to be able to use for. The Private Act does not give us land use oversight. That stays expressly with the Metro government. And the Private Act doesn't allow us to issue bonds without Metro signing on. And I mean, I think hearing from Anna and Ben over the last 4 months, we can hear there's a ton of work being done just to be able to implement this 550-acre vision with the infrastructure overlay that's necessary to allow for placemaking. I mean, without an oversight interacting with NDOT, Metro, Oracle, the Titans, PSC, to be able to bring that all under one vision, I mean, to me, that's, I think, the great benefit of the authority, and it's quite a lot of very important oversight work for vast public funds to be overseen by a dedicated team that's on top of all of the component parts, even though there's lots that we can't make private owner one do, and in the same respect, there's nothing we can do to make Metro convey land to us without conveyances. Metro can always just stay the private property owner if they so choose. If the council doesn't want to assign land, there's nothing we can do to make them assign land. And they just, in that situation, can still develop the land the same way the owner of Tract 1 can develop their land and the owner of Tract 3 can develop their land. There's still going to be a private property owner developing land subject to land use restrictions from Metro. And under, imagine East Bank, under the, NDOT's decision about where the boulevard is, I think there's a lot of authority within the authority, but that authority doesn't include the authority to make a private landowner do specific things outside of land use restrictions that, the normal things that we can place on private property owners. So to me, I believe y'all are doing a ton of work, and there's a ton of work to be done. And the fact that we can't make Metro give us the TPEC land before negotiation is done doesn't mean that we don't have authority and there's nothing for Ben and Anna to do. So, I think the fundamental, what I'm hearing, that the underlying problem is that just the reality of private property in some respects. Like, Metro owns the land right now, and while they, I think, in good faith intend to transfer it, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see how we could make them transfer it free of any encumbrance if they don't want to, because they don't have to give it to us. Is that accurate?
Look, Metro still has capability to be zoning and doing whatever they want. This has no ability on that. But Fallon, after this first series of 5 to 7 parcels, there's another 15 coming that have not been decided on what's going to happen. I can tell you more than likely what's going to happen. It's going to be the same way it was done with these, which is Metro's going to negotiate it all. They're going to work with them to tell them what's on it. They're going to work out the deal, and then it's done, and then they come here, and that's what it is, which is fine. But I think in your statement, you said there's a situation where we have oversight. Well, then we need to change this to the East Bank Oversight Committee, because that's really what this is. It's not an authority. It's not an authority. We're not developing anything. We're here to oversee it, and at some point in the future to collect rents. And there's still a lot more to go. And so it's just, my point is if Metro truly valued this board, they would have transferred those parcels currently to us and allowed us to have ownership of them like they said they were going to do 6 months ago. But they haven't. And they haven't because they haven't negotiated the final piece of property that they want to negotiate, because they're wanting TPAC to pay somewhere between $40 to $50 million in addition to their cost, that's their doing. But we get it after the fact. That's my point. And we're not an authority at this point. We're not developing anything. We're an overseer. I think you're right in your initial that we're an overseer of what this looks like. And if that's what we are, then my question is $220,000 the appropriate amount for us to be an overseer? Or do we want to incur that cost knowing 5 years from now we got to pay back the $1 million and everything else back to Metro? That's just my comment, right? Is it worth us paying that back when we can start paying rents? When what are we truly doing?
Yeah, and I think I would add, just on the speaker's comments, I see this as kind of an evolving conversation. And yes, I do think that having clarity around the authority's powers is really important right now. It has been a confusing situation. But I see hiring Ben, having a CEO who can have a seat at the table in these negotiations and represent the authority and our interest in defining, if we ever get to a point we want to, renegotiate the intergovernment agreement with council, Ben would be that person who's assigned to us. So I do want to continue exploring what it is this authority does and what's the scope of our powers. But I do think the next best thing to do that is by hiring Ben and having a CEO.
I just got one question for Ben. So Ben, Bob Mendez meets with Fallon every 2 weeks. Has he ever invited you in that meeting?
We have separate standing meetings with the Fallon Company and those representatives.
Do you meet with the same people or different people?
Same people.
Any reason why you wouldn't be included in one meeting instead of doing two separate?
Nope.
Okay.
No, we have standing meetings where we discuss all parameters of their project and move all parameters of their project along.
But to my question, has Bob Mendez ever invited you into that meeting?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, the speaker mentioned the airport authority, and as an 8-year member of the airport authority, we've all seen the success of the authority and what has happened, but it is truly an authority. everything that happens, that authority comes through one person. And he makes all the decisions. We own the land. And whether it's we're negotiating with the airlines or whether we're negotiating with the concessionaire, it doesn't matter. Everything comes through one person. It's not this meeting and that meeting. Everything comes through the authority. And to piggyback on what the speaker's saying, until we're that level of an authority, it's going to be a recipe for a really bad situation because you got too many people at the table doing too many different things, and there's not one person who's clearing everything through. That's just my opinion.
I will say I can fully appreciate the concern and the perspective that we don't have the land yet and we don't have the ability to negotiate that land. I also agree that it makes sense to have somebody, to your point, to have a person at the table who represents fully in these daily granular conversations that we aren't having as board members with Fallon, with Metro. So I would be in favor of the contract for purposes of exactly that, while still understanding and appreciating the concern over what our authority and power is. And I think it would be appropriate to ask, because we just talked about, would you, Mr. York, be willing to go back and try to renegotiate if you could? I think it would be appropriate, if the board sees fit, to ask Mr. York to talk to Fallon and Mr. Mendez about combining those two meetings into one on behalf of the authority, so that there's not a game of telephone, so to speak, of what happened in that meeting, what happened in this meeting, but we just get everybody at one table with the Fallon group, with Mr. Mendez and with Mr. York as the authority's employee and executive.
Yeah, I completely respect that. And this line of conversation, I think, is helpful to let us understand, like, when you just make one comment, you're not really sure what the soul of what you're really trying to get across. And so I respect the conversation. So I'm also in agreement that having an understanding of Mr. York being, like our bulldog in the room, and he has already said yes, he is willing to do that as our employee. It is our expectation, and we set an expectation for the roles and responsibilities of our employees, and I think that we've done that in this conversation. Whether or not we need to vote on that, I think that the concept of a partnership. Anybody that's ever done deals before know that when you got nothing at the beginning, you have to have strategic partnerships in order to get off the ground. And so to the point that Caitlin was making, I'm sorry I used first names instead of last names. To the point that Caitlin was making, there are going to be layers of what we're doing. We are building the East Bank. There's infrastructure improvements, there's land negotiations, all of those things. There's public comment, there's city officials that are all involved, and so it will be messy for a little bit. The airport, with respect, I'm not on that board, but it existed already. So it has something that we don't have right now, in that we are trying to build something from the ground up. So to the point that Scott made, there is a lot of work that is currently being done by Ben and Anna to be able to work on those infrastructure improvements and to do the testing and to do the engineering and to have the conversations and to create those community meetings. So having been somebody that's been in a lot of those meetings myself, it is well worth $220,000 annually. It is a lot of work. It is a thankless job, and it does not have an 8 to 5 hour. So where are we now?
If I could I think we're still in the discussion, and we can draw the discussion to a close at any point. I would, one thing, point out, I think we have given some pretty clear directives to Mr. York in the event we approve this contract. And I would just also like to point out, as Mr. York, I'm sure, is keenly aware, there is the termination clause for cause, which is very clearly defined. One of the definitions is, or one of the sections of the definitions is any act or omission that is reasonably expected to cause material harm to the authority. There's also a provision about termination without cause as long as we give 90 days notice. So if we find that Mr. York is not representing our interest to the board's satisfaction, we do have some actions that we can take.
Okay.
So,
Ben, if somebody's interested in some of the property that has not yet been transferred, who's the point of contact?
As it is Metro land currently, I would say that there would be a conversation that occurs between the Chief Development Officer and the East Bank Development Authority CEO, whomever that is.
I mean, would it be you or the Chief Development Officer?
I believe it is a both and conversation. At this moment, as we do not retain ownership of it, we would be the kind of the tip of the spear to move that forward in all things infrastructure and mobility, and we would work with the agencies within Metro to further that project.
No, I'm talking about like if somebody's interested in buying a piece of property or leasing a piece of property.
I think that is a conversation that's a both and. It's both the mayor's office and the development authority's CEO, whomever that chooses.
Okay.
is there any other discussion? Are we ready for a vote? So the motion is to approve the contract. I believe that was seconded. Is that right? Got sort of lost track. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. York, on your employment with the East Bank Development Authority. Next item on the agenda is the East Bank Development Authority's legal representation pursuant to a motion that was approved last month. My recommendation would be, given the limited funds that the board has, I would recommend that we hire an attorney on a case-by-case basis, that we can have conversations. If we get the agenda ahead of time, if there's anything on the agenda that gives cause for concern, we can hire an attorney on a case-by-case basis. My personal recommendation and feeling is that we don't need to spend the authority's limited funds on an attorney, on independent counsel, given that we have an entire department that is very equipped to advise us on this. If there is any conflict, certainly they would, I believe they're very ethical in that department, and I believe they would tell us that there's a conflict. If we think there's a conflict, we can certainly choose to, even if they disagree, we can certainly choose to hire an independent attorney. So my recommendation would be, presumably it would be Saul Solomon. We've used him before on the IGA. He has a lot of experience, so I would recommend that we use Saul on an as-needed basis. In the event anything ever comes before the board that exceeds Mr. Solomon's area of expertise, then we could look at someone else. But that would be my recommendation, of course, subject to approval by the board, any discussion by the board.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to share, I definitely raised concerns that we needed independent counsel in the last several months. And since that last meeting, I've had direct conversations with the mayor, with Ben, and Tom Cross gave me a lot of his time. And I feel like, one, my concerns stemmed from, as we've been standing up this authority, there's been no shortage of voices in the room advising the authority, some in positions of power and who might have legal expertise, but not the deep development expertise of the matters that come before this board. And I feel like that's been a confusing environment for many. And one of the things that I brought to Mr. Cross was clarity on who would make the call if there was a conflict or perception or real that Metro and the East Bank's interests were to diverge. And I was very confident in his response and in his advice on how we were to proceed. So, Mr. Cross, I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you mind sharing with the board kind of what you shared with me and how the Sports Authority works as a model?
If I could reframe that just slightly, because I think there's sort of three models for how this works, and Mr. Granberry has described the one at the Airport Authority, where they have an in-house legal staff that advises the CEO, Doug Crulin, and then I think you have outside counsel too. So that's one, and then
Outside counsel only for the board.
right.
And other outside counsel as well.
For specialized matters. So then the second one is the Convention Center Authority, and they don't have an in-house legal staff. They occasionally ask questions of us, but they have outside counsel. It was Charles Robert Bone for a good while, and he's doing something different. He's handed it off to somebody else in that firm. Then the other two authorities that Metro have are the Sports Authority and the Hospital Authority, and Metro Legal, by virtue of language in the intergovernmental agreement, similar to the one that Metro has with this authority, provides legal counsel, except when there's a conflict. And that has happened already with this board, where with the intergovernmental agreement, we recommended that you hire outside counsel for that because we can't negotiate both sides of a contract. So you hire Saul Solomon, who knows municipal law well, and for whatever it's worth, I think he's a good choice. We have done that for the Sports Authority a few times too, where it was either an intergovernmental agreement amendment or something else where we felt we couldn't ethically advise the board in that circumstance. So long-winded answer to your question, we will raise it if we see a conflict, and if anyone on the board feels that there's a matter where you need outside counsel, either because of you need specialized expertise or because you think there might be a conflict too, that's certainly within your power to do.
I think there should be robust discussion. I'd love it to be with the motion on the table. I would move that we do rely on Metro Legal as our primary counsel for issues, and of course on an ad hoc basis. As any conflict arises, then we can look to hire outside counsel. So I think it'd be great to have a motion on the table, and then we can discuss robustly. Anybody second?
Second.
Okay. Present.
I think as a board, we should have more than one person that we're nominating for independent counsel. I think we should have at least 3 to 5 different council member names in the hat for independent counsel, and the board to decide on who we would want to go with. So Saul might be great for 30% of the board, and he might not be great for 70% of the board. But I would want us to have a couple of names in the hat instead of just throwing Saul's name out there to represent us. And that's just my opinion.
So would your preference be that we have, on an as-needed basis, we make an independent decision with each issue who to hire, or would it be that we have 3 to... I'm not sure I understand how that would work practically.
So us as a board, we come up, we have a discussion and say, hey, this is who I think we should hire, and we make the decision. We come together, we make the decision on who we want to hire as that independent counsel when time needs be, and that's who we go with moving forward. But just throwing Saul's name out there off the gate, I guarantee you Nashville is grown. It's other lawyers in town that does this type of work. So let's just see what's going on.
So I think that I could agree with that if the goal is to find specialty, to the point that Caitlin was making. Like if it's a conversation and we really need to say who's the best suited to help us with real estate law, then we call special counsel for real estate law, versus if it's a financial situation or transportation or whatever the other situations might be. Without that, it is going to limit our ability to make quick decisions. We only meet once a month, and if at every time there's something we have to vote on who we want to talk about that issue, it would just prolong being able to make the decision. So I think that there could be a recommendation that we review, to your point, a list of 3 to 5 people that are like pre-approved for specialty counsel. Is that what we're saying?
I think if that's what y'all want to go for as the board, then that's the decision that I'll go with. I'm with the board. Whatever we decide, let's make it happen. But I just feel like It's other lawyers in town that represent certain entities, and y'all saying specialties. Let's just figure it out.
I think that I agree that in the interest of being able to make decisions in a timely fashion, it does make more sense to say we have an attorney on standby, so to speak, and that as needed we can rely on that attorney. And if something does come up, I think we will have plenty of notice that this is going to be a niche area that might not be in that person's area of expertise. I know when the first time around when we were looking at the intergovernmental agreement, I spoke to a couple of attorneys, and some of them had conflicts, some of them just weren't interested. I actually think it's harder than you might expect to find an attorney who's got the municipal authority or the municipal experience. It's relatively niche itself. So that's how I came up with the recommendation of Mr. Solomon. I've worked with him in the past. I trust him. I trust his legal advice. And I trust him to tell us if it's something that exceeds what he's comfortable advising on. But again, if the board sees fit to ask for a recommendation of 3 to 5, I can go back to the drawing board and try to come up with 3 to 5 that I haven't already spoken with.
I just have a question. So the TPAC MOU, who drafted that?
I think that it was sort of a joint effort between Metro Legal, the mayor's office, and the TPAC representatives. They were using, actually don't recall whether they were using attorneys for that or not.
So if you look at the TPAC MOU, it says in Section 2, subsection D, it seems to give Metro the right to monitor the project to ensure compliance with approved plans, specifications, and other requirements. So my question is, how can Metro reserve any right to monitor or exercise control over the project once it cedes its interest to the authority? How can that MOU violate the private act?
And I may have misunderstood you. When that contract is, assuming that it plays out the way that you expect it to, and Metro conveys that property to the East Bank Authority with a fully negotiated TPAC agreement, it will be up to the authority to monitor compliance with plans.
But that's not what the MOU says.
Well, the contract, there's going to be a final contract that supersedes the MOU.
Right, but if that's not, why would it even be? My point is, why is it even in the MOU if you know after the fact that it can't be? Because what it seems to show is that Metro wants to contain some type of control over TPAC during the process. Or otherwise, it wouldn't be in the MOU because there would be no reason.
Well, at the time the MOU was drafted, the intergovernmental agreement had not been drafted or executed with this board, but we moved down the field some, and at this point, the intergovernmental agreement contemplates the conveyance of all of the initial development area property to the board, along with all of the relevant contracts that go with it. So the authority is going to be monitoring compliance with TPAC's obligations, whatever they turn out to be.
And if I can jump in, and I guess as an example, once we get to a point where there is a contract between the authority and TPAC, would that be an example where we would consider an outside legal counsel to represent us?
You certainly could. And I think the way this is expected to play out is Metro is going to enter into an agreement with TPAC under which Metro commits to spending money and TPAC commits to spending some money, and they commit to building a certain thing into a lease, and those contracts will be assigned to the authority as other contracts were pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement, and the property would get conveyed to the authority. I'm not sure I answered your question. If at any point in that process you feel that you need outside counsel, that's fine.
But so let me just ask another way. Does Metro have any power on the private act to reserve oversight over a project other than land or zoning?
It does right up to the point where it conveys property.
But after that?
After it conveys property and relevant agreements to the board, no.
Okay.
Except through the zoning code, which that
right, just the zone, but they can't maintain oversight of the project at that point.
Building codes, things like that, there's still going to be some Metro involvement, but no, it's going to be the authority's primary responsibility to assure that TPAC complies with the development agreement and the lease.
Right, but let's say that it transfers over, you have this, and they need to change their plans, and they do this. Once we acquire that, that's all within our domain. Metro is no longer involved.
Yes.
Okay. And then this is just for clarification. If the authority so desired to sue Metro government, is that possible?
Yes.
At that point, Metro Legal would have to recuse, right?
We would not be able to ethically represent you in that.
Okay. And then as legal counsel, at what point can we start putting rents on different properties to accumulate funds?
I think you correctly described the basic terms of the Fallon Development Agreement, such that they don't start paying rent until they've taken down the properties and they have money coming in themselves from rent.
But does that include the additional post, these 5 to 7 parcels, the other ones potentially in the future that they could get? Does that contract keep those in that same criteria? Yes. Can the authority have Metro pay rents on the property that they have within the development? So the only people we can charge rent to at this point, the only one, is no one.
At the moment, that's correct. And there is one piece of property that has already been conveyed to the authority, but there's no rent coming in on that. It's the plaza. So rent will start coming in to the authority once the properties have been conveyed. Fallon takes them down. Fallon has the developments essentially complete, and they have rent coming in too. And back to the question I think you asked about charging rent to Metro, you couldn't charge rent to Metro while Metro owns the property.
And this board has the capability of putting liens on property, if so needed.
I'm at a loss to see what kind of lien.
You never know. I'm just saying, you never know what the future holds.
Well, that's true, but the liens are all statutory, and I'm not clear on what kind of a lien you could seek to impose on
failure to pay.
For rent, failure to pay rent. The process for collecting your rent is a lot simpler than putting a lien on the property.
I understand. I'm just asking, is it because in the private act, I think it talks about liens.
It may. I'm thinking of liens in a totally different context. You have once these properties start paying rent to you. If Fallon were to stop paying rent, eventually you could terminate the lease and get the property back without a lien. I mean, you still would own the property. A lien would not be necessary.
Right. And then is there a process? So these contracts that are negotiated, we can change the construction contract if we so deem. Like if we see it, we can amend it, do whatever we want to it, even though Metro had an agreement with them on it.
These would be your contracts, yes. Now,
So
you couldn't amend them in a way that might violate the intergovernmental agreement, but it's unlikely that would happen if you're just talking about, you wanted to change the development agreement in some way that sped up construction or slowed it down or anticipated a slightly different kind of project.
And just for a point of reference, when Bob Mendez earlier this year said they were going to transfer those parcels to the authority, has there been any conversation to you all about that being undertaken?
We talk about that quite a bit, and Mr. York is correct that the reason why it hasn't happened yet is because we have to have a plat. These parcels are not, like the roadways have to be far enough along so that their surveys can be completed and the plat can be completed before we can transfer individual lots. Right now, we don't have them in a condition where they can be conveyed. That's the holdup.
Right. And then this is my final question. Thank you for the due ability for me to ask this. So my understanding is Fallon's paying for a lot of infrastructure costs for their parcels. TPAC, if they get to this site, is going to pay for infrastructure costs as well. Roads, water, sewer, gas, et cetera. Piedmont Gas is having to pay for infrastructure costs because they're having to move their gas line.
Most of the movements of the both Colonial and Piedmont, they're not paying for that. Either the Titans or Metro or somebody else is paying for that primarily.
Well, that's different when I hear, because I hear Metro's not paying for it, and they told Piedmont they had to pay for it, or TPAC had to pay for it. So, but rumors are rumors, right? I got it. I hear that all the time. And so, so my point is, if I'm developing on the East Bank, and Fallon's having to put in all this infrastructure, and then TPAC's paying for all this infrastructure, and I'm a landowner and I come second to that, I benefit from their investment, correct?
That's often true in a development.
Correct. So how is there no way for them to recoup some of their costs or the next property owner to pay to help recoup that cost? Why is it bared by the pioneer who decided to go first?
I was going to use that exact term, that sometimes if you're going to be the first mover or the pioneer, and I actually think Mr. Granberry could probably speak to this too, subsequent developers often do benefit from infrastructure that has been completed by others who came first. And I know in the Metro's water and sewer code, there's a way for a developer who puts in a major, like a trunk sewer, a major water line, to recoup some of that from capacity fees that subsequent developers pay. That's not really a part of the roadway or other kinds of infrastructure parts of our code.
But if a piece of property, if somebody's going to build something there, could the authority or Metro not say this line costs $2 million, there's 5 parcels, it's going to be $100,000 to make these others whole, so that everybody's whole at the end and everybody has the same skin in the game, instead of one person paying out $25 million and that everybody else gets to benefit with no recourse? Could the authority have that ability to do that?
If you can get everybody to agree to it, you could do that by contract. I'm not sure you can impose that requirement on subsequent
The
developers.
contract would be the ability to build on the authority, right? I mean, that's what you're negotiating with TPAC. In order to build, they got to negotiate all this other stuff. So why could you not do that for the other parcels?
The negotiations with TPAC have to do with building infrastructure that is necessary for their project. They're not being asked to build. I mean, certainly some of those roads will benefit others, but they're not being asked to put in a sewer line, for example, that's way oversized for their project. They would just have to pay for a sewer line that's sized for their property, or for one fraction of a larger line.
But they're paying outside their blueprint. That's my point.
Yes, for some things.
So outside that blueprint, they're paying something for someone else to benefit at some point that they don't have to build.
Yes, but mostly roads, though, and the other two things that are relatively expensive have to do with construction on the bridge. And it's hard to see who else you would ask to pay for a portion of that.
I mean, I know I live in rural part of Tennessee. I consider a footbridge infrastructure, right? I consider infrastructure water, sewer, gas, roads, right? A footbridge, which is the whole thing, that's a whole nother process there. But I'm just saying, if Fallon has these parcels and they build a line all the way to their parcels, and it allows other parcels in between them to benefit from building that line, can this authority, as we're negotiating, or Metro negotiating with that person to build on that parcel that will be beneficial or benefit from that line, could Metro, the authority, say, since they built it, you're going to have to pay a portion of what they built, and Fallon is somewhat made a little bit whole where they're not the pioneer? I mean, is that possible?
I think there's probably a way to do it. It would be a somewhat complicated contract negotiating to get there. Sort of building in some developers' equity such that others who built on intermediate lots would have to repay the initial developer for some of that investment. Yeah, I think there's probably some legal way to get there.
It just seems like to me that's fair. I mean, I'm not saying that we do that today, but it's fair. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Okay. So I think to your point and the speaker's point, the infrastructure development district that the state passed this year is a tremendous tool to accomplish exactly what the speaker was referencing, because you go ahead and build infrastructure and it attaches to the parcel. So it's all tied to bonds and it's more like an additional tax, but you're paying for it up front. And then you pay back over time to pay back for those dollars spent. Ben, on the plat that's required to get these properties transferred, until the boulevard's decided on, that plat will never, you can't get to a completed document. Is that a fair comment?
So certain parcels are able to go ahead and record in permanent plat. But to your point, unless the lines, the dark edge lines of the right-of-ways are locked down, you're absolutely correct. There is some swag in there that can be built in that gives you the ability to say, plus or minus a few feet, we think we're in the right and we're in the good and we can go ahead and record. But until that decision is nailed down, we don't have the ability to say 100% without any shadow of a doubt, this is why. And that's part of the reason Tom mentioned this, part of the reason the plat hasn't moved forward is because we didn't know the line and grade of the 2nd Street 6 months ago. That was still in design work with the Titans. And then the boulevard is still in question. And so we don't have that ability. But we are reaching critical mass where we need to move forward on these with some swag and giving ourselves some cushion to say there's the ability to say it's this. If we need to go back and entertain a change in the near future, we could do that. If it's 5 feet one way or the other.
And earlier you mentioned the parties that were involved, just right after the public comments, who was involved with making the final decision. Are we leading that conversation?
We, the development authority, are the subject matter experts in that we are advising the asset owner, Metro government, with their entities, CHIME, Choose How You Move program, NDOT, WeGo, Mayor's office, as the kind of the decision board that is working the problem on that side.
And ultimately, we'll have to approve that because it'll be part of the plat, right?
Ultimately, it will be part of it will define the properties that come to us as a board, as an entity.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other discussion on the motion regarding legal representation? Those were all, I think, questions about asking our current legal counsel. Is there any other discussion about the general idea of hiring what was it? Independent?
Yeah, I'd say my motion was the first half of the equation without getting directly to Member Carter's comment. My motion was that we proceed using Metro Legal except when on an ad hoc basis we determine we need independent counsel.
Is there any further discussion on that? Do we want to include who in the interest, there was some discussion about, in the interest of moving forward quickly, having a particular attorney. Yes.
Just one question. With Metro Legal, is it possible to have one person Metro Legal that represents us instead of having, how many attorneys do you all have over there? I don't even know.
Soon to be mid-40s. I don't know the exact.
So, just point of clarification, if we're going to go with Metro Legal, it'd be nice if you would dedicate one person, at least to our questions initially, to create the dialogue.
I plan, assuming this motion passes, I plan to be here for these meetings. There were going to be situations where I might have a time conflict, and I have to ask somebody else to come. But I've worked with Ben and Anna and others on this project for a long time, and it wouldn't make sense for me to hand it off to somebody.
I get it. I just know sometimes when things get legal and in the General Assembly, it might hit somebody that you didn't think, and then all of a sudden that's a different perspective. And so once you develop the relationship, you want to keep that intact as much as you can.
I can confirm that we only deal directly with Mr. Cross.
And I will also, for clarification purposes, from my time at Metro Legal, and I believe it still works this way, the department is divided into teams, and teams of 2 or 3 are given specific departments or boards. So it sounds like in this case we've got Mr. Cross and maybe one other attorney that is assigned to us. So it would only be 1 or at most 2 in the event of a time conflict.
Yeah,
is that correct, Mr. Cross?
The point of clarity then, to the speaker's point, is that instead of saying Metro Legal, that we're specific to Mr. Cross's team.
Sure.
Okay.
Can you clarify the motion?
I was just about to ask really quick. So it sounds like I think we will need a second on the clarification, but it sounds like the motion would be to proceed with Mr. Cross as our legal representative, absent any conflict or specific request by the board, in which case we would proceed with another attorney. My recommendation for that would be Mr. Solomon, unless it exceeds his expertise. So that's the clarification, but I don't believe that is I think that needs a second, or it needs to be amended.
For further discussion, can I then turn back to Mr. Cross and ask, from your perspective, does that feel like a proper way for us to do it? I mean, the Metropolitan Department of Law, Wally Dietz is of course, Director of Law. You're under him. I mean, I just want to make sure we haven't done something that seems improper to say you're our lawyer. The department's our lawyer and you're our point person is what it seems like. Is it problematic for us to have a motion that says you're our lawyer
It would be better because, I mean, I do serve at the director's pleasure and discretion for it to be Metro legal, but I will give you my personal commitment that I will take the assignment at least until the board gets up and is on the rails.
Okay, so to answer your question, Mr. Granberry, the motion is to proceed with Metro Legal as our attorney, official, the department as our representative, with outside counsel to be retained on an as-needed basis. And that has been seconded, so absent any further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes. Next item on the, we're halfway through the agenda. Next item on the agenda, the executive committee. This is something that is in the bylaws, appointing an executive committee made up of the chair, the vice chair, and one other board member. So I believe this matter is to elect, for the board to elect the third member of the executive committee. Is that correct, Mr. York?
Correct, as contemplated by the bylaws.
I'd like to make a motion to add Ms. Mona to the executive committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Hodge, are you willing to accept that motion? All right, no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Congratulations, Ms. Hodge. Next item is the East Bank Development Authority retirement benefits contract, consideration of that. Mr. York, do you have a report on that?
Yeah, all right. So we have started hiring employees. Michelle Scopel, sitting just to my right, was our first official hire outside of Anna and myself. We are working on finalizing a deal with a finance person to bring them on. And one of the things that all prospective employees want to ask is, what are my benefits? And so it's not as simple as just going out and selecting them as a quasi-government agency. And so we have to solicit that. The fastest and easiest way for us to solicit it through Metro Procurement was with the help of our finance folks who are in the attendance in the audience, and the Voya folks who are also in attendance, was to use a standing Metro contract and tailor our own plan, a 457B plan. We will entertain reopening this up and looking at a full 401k plan in the near future, just to kind of see if that's a apples to apples, if there's been a cost benefit to it for Metro or for the Development Authority versus using the Metro contract. And so at this time, that is the process with which we're moving forward. The match benefit was contemplated in our operating budget. It's contemplated in the employee handbook that we have since sent to our prospective employees. And so what we're here today is to enter into that discussion. We want to further that. We want to be able to sign that contract when the official ink dries from the Voya consultant. And so that's the point of today, is to entertain that conversation with the board and to get a recommendation moving for approval.
So, Ben, before we get to the approval, I know I just seen Miss Michelle, but I would like her to come up and introduce herself to the board. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nate. I'm Michelle Scopel. I am on week 2 here with the EBDA. I'm no stranger to Metro. I'm actually a Nashville native. Born and raised. I've worked in and around Metro government for about 20 years now, both with the public sector, also with the private sector. Really the last decade or more, I've spent a lot of time working on some of the larger complex city projects like the Sounds Ballpark Stadium, Fairgrounds, Expo work, infrastructure. I just have a tendency to really like complex, challenging puzzles, and this fits the bill. I'm very excited to be here. I've followed along closely as much as I could, with the whole Imagine East Bank. I'm really excited to be here. I'm officially Director of Program Management, very quickly getting up to speed to all that is happening. That's kind of been the one thing is that I'm, there's a lot in motion already, which is wonderful to see. So I'm really just drinking from the fire hose and trying to learn and get up to speed and get to work.
And if I can just compliment Michelle for a second, as a tenant on 2nd Avenue, where Michelle's been an office tenant, Civic Design Center is located there. And she's been overseeing the 2nd Avenue rebuild process just in terms of a complex project with many stakeholders that have the ability to be unhappy with the street closure. Michelle and her team just communicated so beautifully, handled a really complex infrastructure project, and just has all the qualifications that obviously kudos to our new CEO, Ben, for recruiting her and hiring her. She's, really excited for the team you're building, Ben, and thank you for joining Michelle.
Yeah, I will say, Michelle and I have worked together since the Sound Stadium. She really took the ball and led that one. And we've worked together on several large, complex puzzles, as she called them, and I can't think of a bigger puzzle. She's going to backfill a lot of the day-to-day operations and program management tasks that I was currently juggling with all of the other things that come with this role. And so really looking forward to having her kind of join the team and get up to speed.
All right. Any other discussion or questions, I guess, on the presentation?
Quick clarifying question on the Voya. Is this on the Voya?
Yes.
Okay. Is a 401A plan considered in part of the package, or is it just the 457B?
It's the 457.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just the 457.
Is there a motion regarding the benefit contract?
I'll move to approve the benefit contract as presented to us.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Next item on the agenda is the Garney construction contract.
Yeah, so during the construction of the stadium, NES and the Titans worked on stadium feeds, and part of that stadium feed was the installation of some underground duct bank from various points with north and east of the East Bank to a certain location. And so the stadium has actually constructed portions of this duct bank that go from Woodland Street, the intersection of Woodland and Interstate Drive, down to would be the northeast corner. That's the top left corner of the picture you're seeing here. This work that we're entertaining is an extension of that duct bank along the entirety of Interstate Drive. Also installing a ITS duct bank that would be utilized for Metro ITS as well as third-party providers. All of your comms providers are going to be entertained there. AT&T, Verizon, you name them, they're all in the works. And so that installation is being contemplated with this contract. The necessity for piggybacking is they're existing out there today. There's some expedition of the work. There's also some reducing costs. So we're looking forward to moving this project forward. And so the project limits for this phase are the entirety of Interstate Drive. There is a second phase that would come from Interstate Drive and Shelby intersection south towards the KVB Bridge. That phase would be bid out in a competitive bid process through the standard solicitation. That will start probably in the next few weeks. And we'll put out a standard solicitation going forward on that project. But it has a logical termini. This one has a logical termini. And so we thought this project was best to go ahead and get started because it has some critical mass and timing components as far as opening the stadium, preparing ourselves for future infrastructure for projects throughout the East Bank. Are there any questions?
All right, no questions on that. We'll entertain a motion on that if everyone's had a chance to review it and heard Mr. York's presentation. Any emotion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the Garney construction contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion or any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, last item on the agenda is the meeting schedule. I believe we had approved schedules through this month, so now we're going to look at the next 6 months. Part of the reason we're doing it in increments like this is to make sure we have facility to use, no conflicts, that Metro IT can cover it. So you'll see the schedule on the screen in front of you. The October meeting will be at the Howard office building due to a conflict with this room. And then because we meet on the fourth Tuesday of each month, that would fall the week of Thanksgiving. So this, rather than having, and then I guess the week of Christmas as well, because of the way the calendar falls. So rather than canceling both meetings, the proposal is to combine the two, push the November one back and the December one up and combine them both to December 2nd. And then go through February 24th meeting, at which point we will consider further meetings. So are there any questions about that schedule, or do y'all have anything to add? Is there a motion to approve the proposed schedule? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that is approved. So that schedule is before us. It will be published and also provided each month. And with that, the meeting's adjourned. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Granberry.
I called Ben earlier in the week or last week. I'd been out of town. When do you think you might have a sort of a one-year budget for the board to approve?
Yeah, included in that report that I sent you guys, the part of the board packet, was our month-on-month expenditures. We can extrapolate that out to a full year, but that budget is kind of set. We can go ahead and kind of pencil that out for the full year for the next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.